Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So we have covered the first 4 questions, summarizing the method of samatha and vipassana, and emphasizing both methods you can use under the condition that you have attained prashrabdhi, which we translate as clarity, relaxation, pliancy. So we have explained it is the opposite of grossness, and you need a subtle mind to study shamatha and vipassana. Without the subtle mind, one is, so to say, only preparing for shamatha and vipassana. And the next question related to this problem is the Maitreya asking, is the path of tranquility and the path of vipassana, we translate as observation, be said to be different or to have no difference? This is how he asks. So the Buddha replies, they should be said to be neither different nor not different. This is a wonderful answer which comes very often, especially in the non-dualistic approach to Buddhism. The sameness and difference is, according to, in a way, to whole of the Buddhist teaching, is contrary to the law of dependent origination, which is what the Buddha has realized under the Bodhi tree. So the answer of the Buddha is they are not different because the object of concentration is observation. The object of concentration in observation is mind. Let me see the Chinese text. The object of vipassana is the mind. As we have explained, the object of vipassana are the mental images. And these mental images, as explained a little further, and we have explained before, they cannot be separated from the mind. They are produced from the mind. From what mind? From the karmic mind, which is the swasamviti aspect of the mind, the self-witnessing aspect of the mind, which produces the aspect of called the darshana bhaga, the tianfen, and the nimitta bhaga, the xiangfen. We have explained, just like a snail using the 2 antennas, as soon as there is a touch with an object, which is a mental object here, these 2 aspects are bound to appear. We have explained the object of vipassana are the citta nimitta, are the mental images, and the object of the shamatha is the continuity of the mind. We have explained that. And these mental images, they are not different from the mind. They are, so to say, the parinama, the aspect of the evolution of the mind. When there is the object, the mind is subjected to change. So it loses if you grasp an image, and grasping an image or holding an image is what the perception is about. When there is perception, only then there is sensation. Perception and sensation, they are the citta samskara, they form the mind. So as soon as you have the mental image, so this mind becomes two aspects, the aspect of the subject and the aspect of the object. Both are the evolution of the mind, namely of the alaya. And they are a product of the alaya. So because these mental images are not different from the mind, therefore it is said that the object of concentration, here there is no question, there is no concentration, but it is implied here. It just says that the object of the vipassana is the mind. Why they are not without difference? Because differentiated images are not the focus of tranquility. We have explained when we practice shamatha, we do not analyze the mental image, but we stay with the same mind, with the continuity of the mind, so that the same image which has appeared in the past remains now and continues in the future. This is how you get into shamatha. If this continuity stays for a long time with the object not changing, the sensation does not change, and since the sensation does not change, the perception does not change, the mind does not change. This is how you get into the dhyana. And the samadhi, we have explained, is attained then by these 9 citta sthitis, 9 abodes of the mind in the mind, namely the development of smooth continuity of the mind on the object, without ups and downs, without sinking, and without tendency to sinking and tendency to excitement. So this is the method of Yogācāra. So the outer objects, the objects, there are 2 kinds of objects. If you see object with a mind which is turning on itself, and that can only happen in the state of concentrated attention, then it is called the near object, the Chin Suo Yen. If the mind takes the outer object, the table or the chair and so on, separated from the mind, it is the far object, the Yuan, Suo Yuan. So the near objects, they are objects of the concentrated mind, because the concentrated mind is the mind of pratyahara. You bring the mind back to its source from the object. If the mind grasps the object, it becomes an agitated mind. This is very important to understand. When the mind grasps the object as something, what happens? The idea of liking and disliking, and the idea of liking and disliking appears in the agitated mind. So this is how then the prapanchas appear. The prapancha in Chinese is called Xi Lun, which actually means the pleasure, or pleasure is attachment to the discursive mind. So whenever there is the distinction of pleasant and unpleasant, and holding this distinction, then what will appear will be this pleasure in discursive mind, or playing with the discursive mind rather. You can here translate playing with the discursive mind. So in the Abhidharma, the mental consciousness is compared to the drum, and the 5 sense consciousnesses compared to the stones, 5 black stones placed on the drum. When one stone starts jumping, when you pay attention and hold one outer object and indulge in liking, disliking, and discursive thought, so all the other stones will also jump. And that stone which jumps the highest, he makes the biggest noise. And so the mind, which is not taking the mind as object, the karmasthana, meditation object as object, that mind will then run to whatever impression it gets, powerful impression it gets through the senses. If it is from hearing, it will run to the sound and distinguish it as a pleasant sound or unpleasant sound. If it is color, shape, so it will start expatiating on the shape. If it is connected with liking and disliking, the memories of the past come. And this is how we work. So as we will see in this tradition, no matter whether the near object or the outer object, they are all the chitta parinama, they are all the evolution of the mind. So we come to the next question. Maitreya asked, should the images on which one concentrates in Vipassana be said to be different from the mind or not different from the mind. Here you get the most important principle of the Yogācāra. The Buddha answered, they should be said to be no different, because those images are only consciousness. Let me see the Chinese text. In Chinese, it is said they should be said to be no different. Why? Because these impressions, pratibimbas, as we have explained, they are only mind. Chitta matrata. They are only mind. What it means, before we have learned that the object of shamatha leads to the understanding of the principle. In Chinese philosophy, very important distinction between the li and the she. The principle is, in this tradition, the principle is the empty nature of the mind. This is what is to be realized. This empty nature of the mind, according to the Samdhinirmocana Sūtra, never changes. It is always there. So this suchness, no matter whether there is a Buddha to explain it or not to explain it, it is always there. This is very important to understand it. And this is what is to be realized. And this is, as we shall see later in this very text, this meditation on that, even so you have not yet directly realized nirvana or the non-dualistic nirvana as suchness, this is the source of the process of purification. But in order to contemplate on this true nature of the mind, on emptiness, you need to attain this base of prashrabdhi, this base of clarity, relaxation, pliancy of mind and body, in order to be able to meditate on the ultimate reality and get into the process of purification. So in the agamas, usually the purification comes through the contemplation of the own characteristics and common characteristics of the object, which is impermanence and elements and so on. But here, the true realization is a non-dual realization. This non-dual realization is the realization of the own nature of the mind, the Shin, Zishin, Chitta Swabhava. Chitta Swabhava is Eva Shunyata, is the suchness, Tathata. Another word for it is Dharma Dhatu, the sphere of Dharma, or Dharmata, the Faxing, the nature of the Dharma. So this object the non-dual realization is much more difficult than the realization of nirvana, so contemplation of impermanence. But you can get into it through this process of purification in contemplating how the objects arise in the mind. And that you will only be aware when you are continually in the state of shamatha. At least in this sixth stage, which is called shamayati, when the prashrabdi, the pliancy of the body and the mind, comes to a clear expression. So, in this condition, then you can completely appease the mind, go into the samadhi, make it completely equal. Then you can join the shamatha and vipassana to observe, on one hand, the nature of the mind which does not change, and the nature of the mind which produces images. If the mind becomes disturbed, so as we have explained, you can use these some suitable images like breath to get into dhyana, where you, again, dhyana is a state when you are in manomaya kaya. You are in a mentally created body. The five senses go into background. When you become a great accomplished yogi, then they practically disappear. But this is a very difficult training. But to make them go into the background is quite easy, and it is easily accomplished. And then in this state, one can easily see that whatever comes from the mind itself. Because you are in a manomaya kaya. Going into dhyana means going into the mentally created body. So that is why this distinction in Yogācāra between the near object in samadhi, all objects are near objects, and the outer objects when you are not in samadhi, when you pay attention to the outer objects and get hold of the sign of these objects. That's how perception arises, and when there is perception, there is sensation, and the worldly mind, what it distinguishes, as the Agamas explain, is on the base of sensation. The worldly mind distinguishes based on sensation. So you have to get a subtle sensation, subtle perception, to be able to detach. And when you detach, you can observe that actually the Yogācāra, that all the objects are the evolution of the mind itself. It is similar idea as the Samkhya, only in Samkhya it is the Prakriti, here it is the mind itself. So no need for dualism. So before we have established in the previous question that this principle, the empty mind, and the object that it sees is neither same nor different. So the shamatha and vipassana are neither same nor different. And now we learn that what images that the concentrated mind experiences in vipassana are not different from the mind itself, because those images are only consciousness. So we have explained before that the object of both shamatha and vipassana is what one has learned through the wisdom from hearing, Shrutamaya Pragya, and from the wisdom from contemplation, Chintamaya Pragya. These are the objects of both shamatha and vipassana, and they are also conceptual images. So you, as the text correctly explains, even so it is not in the text itself, all these are conceptual images. The 5 aggregates are also conceptual images in this tradition. So what sees these conceptual images, and these conceptual images, they are not different from the mind itself. They are of the same stuff. This is called in Chinese, the original stuff. Original stuff of everything is a mind. So, in other words, when the mind evolves, there appears the aspect of subjective and the aspect of objective, which are called darshana, bhaga, and nimitta bhaga, tianfen, and xiangfen. This darshana bhaga and the nimitta bhaga, they are of the chitta svabhava. They are of the nature of the mind. They are not different from the mind. So, simply said, in this tradition, there is no real outer object. And this is what is to be realized. So, whatever images you hold, they are called abhuta parikalpa. They are called the fanciful imagination, dualistic imagination. This dualistic imagination appears in emptiness. And this is the nature of the mind. Now, in Buddhism, in the Yogācāra tradition, you have 2 big schools. The Sthiramatist explanation, which is more close to Madhyamika, which says that this nimitta bhaga, darshana bhaga, they are just parikalpita. They are pure concepts. According to the tradition of Xuanzang, Srila Bhadra, based on Dharmapala, actually they are paratantra. they are the relative reality. So, Stiramati, if they are parikalpita, then the existence of mind is also purely skillful means, nothing else. For this tradition of Srila Bhadra, if you deny the existence of the mind, then you are in danger of denying the existence of the dependent origination, which is what the Buddha has discovered under the Bodhi tree. So now comes a famous saying, I say that the objects of consciousness are only manifestation of consciousness. 我说是所缘为是所现故。So that what the mind takes as the object is, in other words, only pratibimba, only the reflected image of that mind, only the nimitta of that mind. So it means the realization you have to come to is that all these images of the mind, all these pratibimbas, all these nimittas on the which the pratibimbas are being formed, we have explained the evolution from the resultant consciousness to the naimitika consciousness, then to the pratibimba. First comes the resultant consciousness. All the consciousnesses, the seventh consciousness, sixth consciousness, fifth consciousnesses, they are all the parinama of the resultant consciousness. They are not resultant, they are not vipaka, they are vipaka ja. The consciousness of the ego and the differentiation, mental differentiation on the base of the ego, and the 5 consciousnesses that are based on this evolution. They are all the vipaka ja, they are all born from vipaka, but they are not vipaka. The only vipaka, true vipaka, is alaya, is yofenshin. So this alaya has 3 functions. Adana, it is holding the bijas of the previous experiences. It stores them, therefore it is store consciousness, and it reproduces them. So it is Nengzang and Suozang. It can store and it can also reproduce. On the base of what? On the base of holding, on the base of the mind which dwells. Alaya is a mind which dwells. The mind of the Buddha has no dwelling. Because it dwells, it stores. Because it stores, it reproduces. So these 3 aspects, they exist parallel. As hetu, pratyaya, and phala, cause and effect. So he says they are only manifestation of the consciousness. Actually, it means that which the consciousness perceives as the object is only that which is revealed by the consciousness. That means the pratibimba. And all these pratibimbas, what you have to realize, they are the abhuta parikalpa. And this is very difficult to realize. Abhuta parikalpa means that they have no own nature as such. And that if you want to understand that these images, mental images have no own nature as such, then what will follow? The realization that the all the differences based on own nature have no base in reality whatsoever. Then, of course, also these generalizations and the particularizations that we make, they only appear in the relative reality. In the highest reality, they all come to sameness. But it does not mean that they do not exist. They certainly exist, but in the relative reality. So we come to the next question. Maitreya asked, if the images of which one concentrates are none other than the mind, how does the mind see the mind? This is a very often quoted and discussed question. According to all other traditions of Buddhism, just like a knife cannot cut itself, the finger cannot point at itself, the eye cannot see itself, so the mind cannot see the mind. This is also a base for the Madhyamika criticism of the Yogācāra. They do not accept this svasamviti aspect of the mind, this self-witnessing aspect of the mind. But here we have this situation. The Buddha replied, herein, that must be iha. Iha means in this reality. This reality, of course, here means the reality from the point of view of Paramartha. Just like in the Heart Sutra, Iha Shariputra, Sarva Dharma Shunyata Lakshana. All the dharmas, they are characterized by emptiness. So Iha, in this reality, in this non-dualistic reality, there is nothing at all, seeing anything at all. This is a rather free translation. Let us see the Chinese. in here, Wu Yo Xiao Fa, there is no small Dharma. Nan Tian Xiao Fa, there is no question of small Dharma which is able to observe a small Dharma. He translates as there is nothing at all, seeing anything at all. Of course, he is justified to translate like this, but he does not explain, so it's not clear at all. Actually, what this small Dharma means is there is in this non-dualistic philosophy, there is no agent capable of seeing any object. And without the object, there is no function. The mind functions only if it has an object, right? Alambanam chintayati iti chitta. This is the definition of the mind. But here, there is no agent, so and no object. So everything is from the same stuff, the stuff of the mind. And the mind is great. Even in the Theravada commentaries, you will find that the limitations of the mind are the limitations which the mind imposes itself. Very wonderful. How does the mind impose limitations on itself? By the kleshas and by not understanding the object. Now we come to Yogācāra. Not understanding the object means not understanding that the object is a mind. And therefore, you impose on reality the idea of self-existent nature. And you differentiate in accordance with the self-existent nature. So, as long as you do it, you will always have some vasanas of believing that this reality outside is something really there. So, your meditation will be different. You will want to isolate from this reality instead of facing it. So the real realization here, non-dualistic realization is, as Nagarjuna says, this Sambhati and the Paramartha, the highest reality and the conventional reality, eventually, from the point of view of the highest reality, they cannot be separated. If you separate them, your understanding of the dependent origination will have to suffer. So in the world, the agent or subject and the object, they are different. But in the highest realities, they cannot be different. In the highest reality, in this concept, you have to realize that the object is the product of the mind itself. So here there is nothing at all seeing anything at all. So no subject seeing any object, no agent seeing any real kriya. real function, because without the object there is no function. When the mind is aroused in this way, then there are such images appearing. It translates Zhang Ji Ce Xin Ru Se Shen Shi Ji You Ru Se Yin Xiang Xian Xi. Okay. This is the very precise translation. When this mind is the real mind. Before he says herein, iha, here, this mind, mind of the Buddha, you can say. Because the Buddha is always aware of the suchness. So in the suchness, there is attention, but it is not real attention. There is thinking, but it is not real thinking. There is a feeling, but it is not real feeling. There is a perception, but it is not real perception. Because the mind does not dwell anywhere. So if this mind is aroused in this way, that means when there is an object, when there is a nimitta, then it is so to say, the mind seeing itself. Because the substance is one, no difference. And when you see it, this is a sampajanya. This is awareness. According to Yogācāra Bhumi Shastra, the Bodhisattva Bhumi, this awareness is the result of seeing the suchness. As we have explained, first there is a xiang, there is a nimitta, then there is a name, then based on the name is the idea of self-existent nature. When you see through this very clearly, this self-existent nature is not there, therefore you get the idea of suchness. And when you get the suchness or the perception of the suchness or contemplation of the suchness, you get the sampajanya, you get the awareness. And this is how you purify the mind. It is like seeing something by means of a clean mirror with the object before it. Thinking, one is seeing an image, and thinking there is a separate image apart from the object. So if you have the, according to the commentary, There are many, many different interpretations, 5 interpretations in the one yours commentary, but the common idea is that this mirror can be compared to samadhi. Mind in samadhi is like a mirror. When you are in samadhi, then you can see that the material of the images that appear is the mind itself. And when you can see it, then you will understand that these mental images, these pratibimbas, these reflective images in the mirror, they are what we have described as the nimitta bhaga of the mind. They are the objective aspect of the mind, which comes from the karmic consciousness. Karmic consciousness produces this duality of the seer and the seen. The seen is the nimitta bhaga, the mental image. And what is to be realized? That this mental image, the subject of seeing and the object of seeing, they are one single body, one single essence, not different. Just like object in the mirror is not, if the mirror is clean, is not different from the mirror. If the mirror is well polished. So this paratantra, this dependent origination, actually is the reproduction of this aspect of seeing and the aspect of what is seen coming up from the karmic consciousness, the alaya vijnana. They are evolution of the alaya vijnana. So in the same way, when the mind is aroused, it seems as different images focused on in concentration are appearing. Yes, this is precisely more or less what it says. It seems, they are different images, different pratibimbas appearing in the samadhi. So the mind in its essence is one, but in its appearance, it is two. This is very important. With this understanding, then we can understand the next question, which elaborates on what has been said before. Maitreya asked, if people naturally dwell on mental images. This is his free translation. Let us see the Chinese. Zhu zhu you qing, zi xin er zhu. If the beings dwell in their own nature, what is the own nature of the beings? They follow the five consciousnesses. Because we are in the Kama Dhatu, we are in the sphere dominated by the five senses. So it is natural for the beings, from gods to the denizens of hell, to follow the impression of the five senses. What we think about mostly is what we see, hear, smell, taste, especially touch. And this is what we differentiate, right? This is a natural state. So for the beings in the Kama Dhatu, the natural state is to follow the five senses. So this is what he means when the beings dwell in their own nature. He translates naturally dwell, okay. If people naturally dwell on mental images such as form, that means on the five senses, form, the images of the mind, are these two no different from mind? So if you are not in samadhi, but if you are in normal condition of the mind, paying attention to what is outside and seeing it with abhuta parikalpa, we are all subjected to abhuta parikalpa. This is me, that is you. This is Dhammadipa, that is Tenzin. So this is a natural state. So we are not in samadhi. We are following our own nature in the Kama Dhatu, which is to follow the input from the five senses. So is it the same as in samadhi? We are the things that we see, tenzing, chair, table, notebook, and so on. Is it also these things? Is it also perceiving the mind as in samadhi? The Buddha answered, they are also no different because of 40 awareness. 40 awareness is not a very good translation. He translates viparyasa as 40 awareness. Viparyasa means actually perverted. There are 3 perversions, which are in Buddhism the content of our ignorance. We are ignorant because we have 3 perversions. Perversions of drishti, ditthi, vipalasa. When we become sotapanna, no more ditthi vipalasa. But as long as we are not Aryas, we are always tending to have ditthi vipalasa. We believe in our view to be correct and oppose another view as incorrect and hold to our view as something of being the real reality. But this misinterpretation of the reality, even the correct view we should not hold to, not to speak about the wrong view. And this can only happen when you have realized the highest reality. in the highest reality, clinging to the views becomes absurd. But as long as we are not related to the highest reality, the clinging to the views, we can easily be subjected to. Then, what is much more difficult to finish, that is the perverted perceptions and the perverted differentiations. We have to become a Buddha, an Arahat, to be able to get rid of them. So these three perversions, perverted view, perverted perception, and perverted differentiation, they are the characteristic of ignorance. So we consider that which is impermanent as permanent, that which is never can bring lasting satisfaction as bringing lasting satisfaction, sukha, and that which is non-self as a self. In this tradition, first comes that which does not belong to the self. That means emptiness and the self-perversion. That is self and that belongs to the self. That which does not belong to the self is empty of own nature. So they are this perversion, also the perversion of in Theravada, we mostly speak of perversion, seeing the pure in the impure. Whatever is impermanent cannot be pure. We see that which is impermanent is pure. So 4 perversions, and they are perversions of the view, they are perversion of the perception, and they are perversion of the differentiation. So together, 12 perversions, they are the content of ignorance. Now we have a different interpretation. We have the perversion in regard to these mental images. We believe them to be true, to truly exist, separate from the mind, and that gives rise to duality. Unless we see them inseparable from the mind, we will always tend to duality, to abhuta parikalpa. And so the contemplation is to see this abhuta parikalpa arising from the mind itself, which is of non-dual nature. So, but because of the perverted views, perceptions, differentiation of these images, seeing them as separate from the mind, seeing them as not Advaita, ignorant people do not realize they are only consciousness. And so they misunderstand them. They take them to be really their realistic view. So due to this, the mind will dwell, and the mind which is dwelling is the samsara. And the Buddha is the one who is anoka, the mind does not dwell. So, due to separating these mental images from the mind itself, the mind is subjected to parinama, to evolution, and it loses its non-dual suchness nature. So even if your mind is distracted by the five senses, it still cannot leave its own nature, which is a mind. And the real nature of the mind is suchness. And the suchness is evolves as long as one holds the mental image. Why? Because, as we have explained, this alaya has three aspects. So, as the first words of, we have already quoted, of the Vidyaptimatrata Siddhi of Xianzang, of the Trimshika says, Atma Dharma Upachara Vividhaya Pravartate Vijnana Parinamo Asau Parinama Sachatrida. So everything is evolution of the mind. From alaya, you have the manas. From the manas, you have the sixth consciousness. The sixth consciousness, you have the five consciousnesses. So the five consciousnesses also, their objects cannot leave the nature of the mind. So the five consciousnesses stay, as we have given the example of the drum and the five stones. The five consciousnesses dwell on the mental consciousness dwell on the manas, the individualizing consciousness, which takes as its object the alaya vijnana. So dwells in alaya vijnana. So this is how we work in this world according to the Chittamatrata. So to dwell naturally actually means to dwell on the objects of the mind as being something separate from the mind. That is natural dwelling. And even this natural dwelling is dwelling in the mind, but the ordinary man, he cannot see it. He has to practice samadhi to be able to see it. An ordinary man does not practice samadhi, so he is so much more subjected to these perverted views, perceptions, and differentiations. So, as we have said in this tradition, the purification comes from contemplating on the suchness. Even so, you have not realized the suchness, you subjected to the process of purification by contemplating the suchness. This is the idea of the Mahayanistic philosophy. No matter whether Madhyamika or Yogācāra, this approach is the same. And it is based on the transcendental wisdom. According to the Transcendental Wisdom Sutra, what we perceive the world is like a mist. It looks very, very solid when you are far away, but when you are in the midst of it, when you go into the samadhi, there is nothing to hold to. Because the person who holds and that which is held is just a transformation of the mind. And this transformation of the mind is to be seen. And that can only be seen in the state of relaxation and clarity. So the next question, let's leave it for tomorrow. We have only 15 minutes left for question and answers. These are important principles. We will devote more time to these important principles, to this section of the 6th chapter, dealing with the upaya kaushalyam, the skillful means to understand the Yogācāra meditation. The rest we will just briefly point out, and maybe sometime in future we can explain the objects of shamatha and vipassana and how to use suchness to remove all attachments, all grasping of the mental images. This is the 3rd part, how to use the shunyata to make the mind empty. But the shunyata is also only a concept. The vidyapti matrata is also only a concept. The Yogācāra also explains one who holds to vidyapti matrata did not understand the vidyapti matrata. Just like Nagarjuna explains, one who holds to shunyata, he does not understand shunyata. Shunyata is skillful means to understand the mind. Yogācāra is also a skillful means, a very powerful skillful means to understand the mind. Okay, so that much for today. Yes, Tanzeen.
Bhante, you mentioned or contrasted Sthiramata and Shilavadra perspective on
Tradition, yes.
Darshanavada and Nimittavada. The first view in the Parikalpita, could you clarify the Shilavadra perspective?
Yes, Shilavadra believes that this, when the mind, this alaya evolves into these two aspects, they are to be understood as not as parikalpita, but as paratantra. They are real. If you deny the reality of paratantra, there is a danger of what is Yogācāra philosophy is to avoid the danger of getting stuck in nihilism. So abhuta parikalpa, these two aspects of the mind, they are abhuta parikalpa. But the abhuta kalpa, you must recognize it. It is there, but it is there in emptiness. This is a meditation. Then for Sthiramati, why not recognize from the very beginning that they are just concepts. Finally, the mind is only one. No? So these divisions, whatever is the divisions, is only the worldly reality. And worldly reality is based on concepts. So Stiramati is closer to the Madhyamika tradition. No wonder he is also the commentator of Mula Madhyamika Karitas of the verses of Nagarjuna. Okay. So,
are there any questions?
Hello, Bhante. Thank you for the class today. It was amazing. Could it be possible to give a little bit more detail in the evolution of consciousness of the movement from manas to the sixth consciousness? From alaya to manas to discrimination, I think I understand more or less, but from discrimination to, for example, I consciousness, I think I cannot grasp.
it's free, you cannot grasp which one?
From manas to sixth consciousness.
Yeah, of course, when you use these mental images, so you already evaluating. And who evaluates? That is a manas.
Yes.
The manas has a continuity, and this continuity is in the mind.
Yes.
And it evaluates on the base of the continuity. Because it evaluates, it has a continuity. If you don't evaluate, there is no continuity. Right?
Yeah.
So who evaluates? It is the impression that there is that this alaya is me, no?
Yeah.
It takes according to Xianzang, this darshana bhaga of the alaya as being the self. This the subjective aspect of the alaya as being the self. This is the object of the manas. So,
but what I don't understand is the next movement. How is possible that, for example, after evaluation, it comes the sound?
pardon?
From
sound? What sound?
For example, sixth consciousness. I take one, like ear consciousness, but could be image, color, or whatever.
No, this is, we are speaking, the manas is connected to the mental consciousness. From the mental consciousness is a base for the five consciousnesses. Without the mental consciousness, five consciousnesses do not work, impossible. You cannot have the I consciousness separated from the mental consciousness. And mental consciousness, when there is a mental consciousness, then there is an evaluation. Right?
Yeah. Just I want to be brief because I really don't understand well. Let's put an example. There is a sound. Then the mind grasps the sound, and then it becomes all the duality like that. But so the evaluations in that case come after the sound, after the ear consciousness, not before, right?
You can have, in this tradition, you can have several consciousnesses together, no problem. This is not in Theravada, but in this tradition, you can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 consciousnesses together. There is no contradiction. You can hear the sound and also see the color and also have the mental impression. Why not?
Yeah.
Because everything is mind. So what is the problem? Everything is mind. Evolution of the mind.
Okay, just to end, the problem, Bhante, is how can I evaluate the sound before the sound?
Why do you want to evaluate sound before the sound? I don't understand.
Maybe it's wrong. Maybe my notes are wrong, but my notes is in the base of alaya. After alaya, it comes manas, and after manas, it comes cis consciousness.
Why after? It is at the same time.
Okay, it's wrong. Okay, my notes are wrong. Okay.
This appears, many consciousnesses can appear together because there is only one mind ultimately. But in order to understand one mind, you need all these divisions, which are in Samvati, not in Paramartha. Okay. They are the relative, all divisions are only in relative reality, not in highest reality. And by contemplating highest reality, you get into the process of purification. This is the method of non-dualistic meditation. So what is the problem?
Now there is no problem. My notes were wrong. That's why the confusion.
Okay,
Thank you. Thanks.
No questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
Bhante, this is Karuna.
Hey, Karuna.
I have one question.
Is the Karuna separate from the sound or Karuna is in the sound? Please tell me.
If I say I am a normal person, an ordinary person, then it is Karuna's sound.
Not complete, but more or less, yeah. For the time being, all right.
Okay. I have a question. When we say the external world is not, it does not exist, then, for example,
it is not that does not exist. It exists only in the Samvrti, only in the relative truths, not in the highest truths. Nothing exists truly in the highest truths. That is why you have all these divisions to make you understand shamatha, vipassana, neither same nor different.
okay.
Nothing exists in the highest reality. There is no, in highest reality, there is neither real existence nor real non-existence. There is neither unity nor diversity. There is neither coming nor going. There is nothing really arises, so nothing can really cease. So what is the problem? And this is the nature of the mind in the Yogācāra.
Okay, but Bhante, being an ordinary person, how should I understand it? Because if, let's say, the bomb falls and several people die, then how should I understand as a normal person, as an ordinary person?
So it is a bomb and people die. It is, of course, it is a lot of suffering. What is the problem? All this exists, but only in Samvati. This is how you get purified, not to starting to mess around, no? You want to mess around, go messing around. But in Paramartha, there is no messing around. That's why everything is in peace. And you want to mess around, go around,
No.
mess around.
No. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
If anyone have any question, please write in the chat box or raise your hand.
Bhante, can I ask one question? I'm Bhagyashri here.
Okay, wonderful.
I was a little confused about, we have also discussed that about Abhuta Parikalpa and how the objects are created by the mind. But then there are also the stages of meditation where images are still existing in those states. So how do we differentiate these, and also with how to differentiate them from the dream state?
You don't need to differentiate. The dream state, and according to Yogācāra, there is no real difference because the mind is one, and between the dream and the awake consciousness.
Okay.
They all come from the mind. The dream comes from the mind. The objects of the consciousness that you see come from the mind. Everything comes from the mind. Why you want to, in the mind, if you hold to the mind, you also hold to the objects of the dream. If you hold to the mind, you also hold to the outer objects. From a point of view of purification, what is the difference? If you are a Buddha, practically you are awakened. You are awakened from what? From holding the images of the mind, just like holding the images of the world, of the outer world. Sunyam lokam avekhasu mogaraja sada sato evam lokam avekhantam machu raja napasati. Same in even in Sutta Nipata. See the world, the dream is your world, the outer world is your world. So see this world as empty. The dream is empty of a real content, except from the mind itself. The outer objects are also devoid of real content, except the mind itself. If you don't hold to the outer objects, you also don't hold to the dream objects. But in dream, you go to the deeper strata of the mind. The Western psychology calls it subconsciousness. But the Yogācāra has not a real division between the subconsciousness and the so-called consciousness. They are just different aspects of the images. And these images, they are not different from the mind. And you need samadhi in order to be able to see it. Okay?
Yes, Bhante. Yes, Bhante.
Are you satisfied?
Yes, yes. It is clear now. Thank you.
So when you are in samadhi, you are in the deep state of the mind. From this deep state of the mind appear all these images. If you don't have sati and sampajanya, you got completely lost in these images and you are like in a dream. But the difference is that in samadhi, samadhi is like a dream, same, but you are in full awareness. But in a dream, you are not in full awareness, you are just blindly following your evaluations of the objects. But actually, in the awakened consciousness, you are doing the same. You are blindly following, not only you, I do also the evaluations of these images. But these images come from the mind itself. And in this tradition, you see the things in a different way according to your karma. No? The same river, as Vimshika explains, is seen in a different way by gods, different way by fishes, different way by men. Who is right? Now we are attached to the concept of paper. When we see 2,000 rupees, we react in a different way than we see 10 rupees. But if you have never been to India and you never used this money, and you are somewhere living in the jungle, so it is a complete meaningless differentiation. But you may hang your mind on something else, like the hunters in the Brazilian forest. So what Atma Dharma Upachara Vividhaya Pravartate. It is the habit, our holding to the real existence of the dharmas and the persons, that we are subjected to evolution of the mind. But you can see it in samadhi, and that is what purifies the mind. Okay?
Yes, Bhante, thank you so much.
So let us do the Punya Parinama. May the merit of this practice spread to all beings so that we attain the state of Buddhism. Om